G'day and welcome to ComicsMATE, your mate in comics from the land down under. I'm Dean James and today we're going to be talking about the race swapping of established characters in movies and TV shows, and why it's not a good thing and is in fact a bad thing. But before we jump into all that, make sure you like this video to push it out into the algorithm and subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. I'd really appreciate it.
I think it's so stupid for everybody because of this whole minorities in Hollywood thing. Stop stealing, all the white people's superheroes. Make up your own, you know what I'm saying? What's up with that?
Stop it. Get some help.
Alright, well this video was inspired by this dickhead, who a couple of weeks ago decided that he was going to pretend that there was a massive backlash to him playing Commissioner Gordon. I just want to add, this guy is actually a really good actor. He was my favourite character in Westworld, and his Commissioner Gordon was not at all the worst thing in The Batman.
All anyone cares about in this place are these white, privileged assholes.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
But none of that changes the fact that what he's saying here is absolutely fucking retarded. And this is by no means limited to just Jeffrey Wright either. There's a bunch of actors of all races that do this all the time, like Idris Elba or Pedro Pascal, who have both notably taken roles that they know they do not fit. They definitely don't look anything like these characters. So it's not at all about being racist to black actors. The problem is actually with all different actors of all different races, though it is mostly the black ones that do this. Anyway, this is what I'm talking about. From Variety Australia, Jeffrey Wright slams backlash to him playing Commissioner Gordon in The Batman as fucking racist and stupid. It's absent all logic. No, what's absent all logic is claiming that fans of pre-established characters and franchises with decades of history are somehow racist because they don't like when Hollywood douchebags like you change those characters' races. It would be the same thing for these fans as if a character like Blade was cast as a white guy in a movie, because that's just not who the character is. And that's before we get into the fact that there was virtually no backlash when Jeffrey Wright was cast, because most people think he's a pretty good actor. He's not Jim Gordon, but he's a pretty good actor. What he is, though, is another example of a Hollywood dickhead trying to drum up controversy surrounding their race. Also, he can claim victim status and garner up sympathy from idiots on social media with his virtue-signaling cry-bully bullshit. But it's 2025, and that shit doesn't fly anymore. People don't give a fuck if you call them racist anymore, and we don't give a shit if you're calling us bigots just because we called you out for changing something that we loved. As I said, there was barely any backlash at all, but the backlash that was there was coming from people who were actual fans of Jim Gordon, not some imaginary racist bigots who simply didn't like Jeffrey because he's black. Because that's what this is, it's your imagination. They're not racist, and they don't actually hate black people. They just want the characters on the big screen to look like they do in their favourite comic books and cartoons. And the thing is, these so-called racist fans are consistent across the board. As I said, if they race-swapped Blade, these people would be complaining and saying the exact same thing, because the character doesn't look or act or sound like the character does on the page or in their favourite cartoons. But that's when Jeffrey Wright would be changing his tune. He would be complaining because they erased a black person from cinema. Well, you're erasing a white person, and not only a white person, a fucking ginger. The ginger side continues.
But Dean, changing a white character black is not the same as changing a black character white because of the history Hollywood has with representation and their lack of diversity.
You're going to have to shut the fuck up, straw man I just made up. First of all, if you care more about diversity quotas and representation than you do about adapting the source material of these decade-old franchises, then you've already destroyed any legitimacy your argument could have had, because you don't actually care about these properties and are only interested in this conversation because of gay political reasons. Hell, none of us were even alive back when blackface was a thing, so that history you're preaching is irrelevant to us as long as we don't continue to repeat it. Secondly, you are completely disregarding the sheer disrespect to the fans of these properties, and to the black community as a whole. I would actually argue it's especially disrespectful to the black fans, because you only believe they deserve half-assed hand-me-down side characters instead of movies for the actual black characters. Characters like Spawn, Static Shock, Blade, or Icon. All of these characters should have had movies in the last decade, but none of them have. It's been more than 20 years since we got Blade or Spawn in a movie, and the general audience doesn't even know who Icon is. And I blame that solely on this forced diversity race-swapping bullshit. There is no denying that there must be some sort of demand for specifically black comic book characters getting their own movies, and the people championing this idea are the ones who are always so quick to defend race-swapping. But that creates a supply and demand issue. They don't need to make a whole movie starring a black character if they can quiet down that noise by including a black guy in a movie that he otherwise wouldn't be in. Now, I don't personally believe you need to see characters of your race for you to relate to them. Blade and Spawn are two of my all-time favourite characters, but I have nothing in common with them in real life. But for those of you that do believe that, think about this. It's easier for a studio to race swap a character in The Batman than it is to invest in an entire movie starring an actual black character. And as long as there is a black character on the screen, the demand will quiet down just enough for the studio to get away with it. You can't say they don't feature black characters if they have them scattered around in all of these side roles now, can you? So why settle for less? It's also short-sighted. And this is for anyone who is on that side of the fence. It's because you were satisfied with an unoriginal hand-me-down leftover sidekick in a movie starring a white hero that we have yet to get a Static Shock movie, or a new Blade movie, or a new Spawn movie. Because if it wasn't for you championing these half-assed measures to quell the demands of the movie-going audience, the studios would have been forced to actually make a movie starring a hero that is supposed to be black. By accepting these cheap race swaps, you are actually hurting your chances of ever seeing the truly black characters from the comics getting their own movies. But don't just blame the studios. As long as the idiot actors like Jeffrey Wright keep jumping at the bait because they're too stupid to see that they're causing a bigger problem and hurting their own ideas of the best possible outcome, this shit will continue. It's time for everyone who is a fan of comic book movies to also start shaming the actors who take these roles, and not just the studios that push it. Because it seems to me like they especially don't believe that any of the actual black characters could lead their own movies. And they're more than happy to just take the scraps from beneath the table of these Hollywood producers and studios.
He's out of line, but he's right.
Look, I know it's hard for a lot of you types to control your emotions, but settle down for a second before you cry in my comments calling me a racist, and actually think about what I've said in this video. I don't want no black actors in movies, and I don't not want to see black characters in movies either. But race swapping characters is not the way to do it. Alright, now back to the article. Jeffrey Wright was also quoted saying, "I really find it fascinating the ways in which there's such a conversation, and I think even more of a conversation now, about black characters in these roles. It's because they're not black characters, as I just explained in length. It's just so fucking racist and stupid." No, it's not. It's just so blind in a way that I find revealing to not recognize that the evolution of these films reflects the evolution of society. Well, if you want to get serious here about it reflecting society, black people, gay people, minorities of all kinds are actually overrepresented in movies and television.
Damn!
Hey look, man, like honestly, if you want it to reflect society, go right ahead, but you're going to lose your job. Because let's be honest, if we have to choose between you and Idris Elba, we're choosing Idris Elba. That's his argument, not mine. And that's a topic for an entirely different video. That somehow it's defiling this franchise not to keep it grounded in the cultural reality of 1939 when the comic books were first published. It's just the dumbest thing. It's absent all logic. There's just so much I could say about this absolute retard's backwards way of thinking. But this video's already long enough, and we've still got a couple more quotes to get through. So let me know down in the comments what you think of Jeffrey Wright and his backwards bullshit virtue signaling. Wright went on to say that the reason Batman has endured as an essential character in popular culture is because he was created to be open-ended, giving future storytellers the freedom to put their own spin on the Caped Crusader. I feel that I own these stories as much as anyone. Perhaps now, because I'm part of them, I have the most skin in the game. I don't think I have to explain why this is a ridiculous statement, right? To claim that you have the most skin in the game, as he puts it, is absolutely laughable in its absurdity, especially when compared to the millions of fans who have read Batman comics for decades, and the countless more talented creators who have worked on Batman in the various mediums he's been a part of. I honestly can't be fucked with this idiot anymore. The Batman was mid, and the only real good parts were the Batmobile and the Penguin. As far as I'm concerned, Jeffrey Wright can fuck off back to his $1 million mansion and stay there until I forget he was ever this much of a race-grifting cocksucker. But I want to hear your thoughts on this, even if you disagree with me, especially if you disagree with me. Because I've laid out my thoughts pretty clearly, and I can't even think of anything that could rebuke my points. So that's all I have for you today. My name's Dean James, your mate in comics from the land down under. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time.